trapped on this plane of existence. Let this game a risk, checkerboard conductive sectors. 3rd degree slices of the pipe within the vectors. Beehive colony, you collect the nectar. Earth's broke down, man, someone call the record. What? I can tell you about some things that gonna blow your mind. Everything that you've been taught throughout your life's a lie. Indoctrinated to regret your perception just to believe a school lesson so you can pass to the next one. Brainwashed so you trust the authority. They want you to think you're the minority. Don't stoke the flame superiority. They'll come to see the Fefe majority.
Okay, we are live, firing on all cylinders. 5/20/2024. That is Full Red Pill by Shill Scanner. The auto-hoax accelerationism continues. Last night we were talking about Joe Rogan, of all people, calling into question whether or not the footage of the atomic bomb tests were fake or not. He was quite literally auto-hoaxing it. And at first I thought, hey, this is something. And then someone in the chat reminded me, if anything, they're trying to get ahead of any kind of criticism when they do fake the nuke. And Joe Rogan is just there to be a contaminant in the punch bowl. We're joined by Diana South, Daniel Morris, 3 up, 3 down, Pete Trippa, Osher 06, Aries 1. All right, now, we're on every single platform I could possibly be on right now, and we've been getting record numbers recently. Phones are open. It's a brand new phone system. Joined by Dewis and Parrot, Ted Stryker, Mr. Trustworthy in the house. Excellent. Yeah, so the new number is on the screen. It's 563-999-3664. Now, I know some people might find those numbers to be troubling, Masonic even. There's some kind of code in there, I'm sure, but I haven't detected it. I don't think you can automatically call 999 a 666. It's not that it's a reach, but if I was trying to make that, I would have done it. This is a completely random number. The other number, the Skype number, is still active, but I'm not using it anymore. It's just one of these things where their phone system doesn't have what we need, which is a caller queue. So if you call in, you can actually listen on your speakerphone, and I can go ahead and get to the call when convenient, and then we can go from caller to caller. So again, phone number's on the screen. That is our new number. All right, so let's see. We were talking about Elvis yesterday. We had a call from Jurassic Liars, who did, in fact, he did mention 519 and these fascinating connections between the birth dates and death dates of various presidents. And the president of Iran dying was pretty much on the menu. And it's all built up, predicted programming wise, for what's going to happen here, which is supposed to be big. And I drew the caller's attention to this. Just note again, Donald Trump was noticing his wobbly podium, which kind of leaned to the left. Now, interestingly, this was kind of a joke. You know, the country's falling apart, leaning too far left. But if you look behind him, it looks like blood splatters. Like, how did that happen? It's too perfect. And this is the photo that went out. Now, there's a lot of attention being drawn to this. The point of it here, though, is that if you look at the podium, it has Lincoln and Reagan, 2 presidents who have been shot. So the whole thing is just too perfect of a setup. I don't think it was a spontaneous issue he had with the podium. I think this entire thing is scripted. He's an actor. I mean, this is season 34 of The Apprentice. But again, this is, to me, more example of predictive programming. And so this president of Iran going down in a chopper like Kobe, very interesting. Because you remember, the events of 2020 really kicked off with the death of Kobe Bryant. So I'm kind of thinking it could be some kind of portentous, ominous development. All right, let's see here. Flying helicopter in the fog can be a recipe for disaster. This is Business Insider. Kobe Bryant and now Iran's president add to a string of deaths. Just pointing out here that the correlation has been made between these two. And I'm under no illusion here that Kobe Bryant's dead. and nor do I think that the president of Iran is dead. To me, this is all theater, and just the fact that these two are being connected is probably an indicator that this thing is very hoaxy. So here's the back end of the helicopter, and you can see the numbers 1136. So if we were to break apart 1136, what do we get out of it? Well, we got 113, 311, 911, 119, 611, 116. Very important numbers. All of them psyopy. Just another coincidence or indication of what we're looking at here. Now, to get back to Elvis, though, because it kind of connects. This is from Miles Mathes's breakdown on Elvis Presley, whom he describes as an intelligence project, which I think is accurate. But going down to the very bottom, he talks about death fakers. And we're talking about staged deaths. So I want to read this because this is actually pretty good. Elvis lived on, but not as active agents fighting the mob. They did not live on in a witness protection program, since they weren't witnesses to anything beyond their own project. They were just protected, as they always had been. They were retired like other prominent assets, including John Lennon, Marilyn Monroe, Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, Sharon Tate, Jimi Hendrix, John Reed, Jack London, River Phoenix, Tupac Shakur, B.I.G., Kurt Cobain, James Dee, Paul Walker, Robin Williams, James Belushi, who died at 33 like Chris Farley, 33, probably should be in here as well. Princess Diana, Michael Jackson, Heath Ledger. Now, Heath Ledger is interesting because there was this audio clip, actually I can find the video, where The Rock is hanging out with the general manager of the Lakers, and he's talking about how before Heath Ledger's, well, this is the weirdest thing, before the movie Dark Knight Rises came out, or right after it came out, Kobe Bryant supposedly had dinner with Heath Ledger. And so they're talking about how he pretty much was asking Heath how to get into character, how he got into this Joker mode and how it was so impressive of a performance. Let me play the clip, because the thing is, when the movie came out, Heath had already been found dead. So there's no way that there could have been some meeting between the two after the movie. But let me play this clip. And I'm just getting into this because Heath Ledger has been mentioned here, and I think it's kind of interesting. Death faker getting advice from another death faker. That sounds plausible. Okay, here we go.
I worked with for 18 years was going back to play Madison Square Garden, and he had just seen The Dark Knight. Obviously, you guys saw that movie. And he's like, hey, hook me up with dinner with Heath Ledger, because he got so locked into that role. I want to know how he mentally went there. And so he had dinner with Heath, and he talked about how he locks in for a role, and Kobe used some of that in his game.
Okay, so Kobe used what he learned from Heath Ledger after watching The Dark Knight Rises in his game, because that makes sense. Now, this story is obviously a hoax, or is it? So this was more or less debunked as a hoax. They say it doesn't add up. The Lakers GM's story about Kobe and Heath doesn't make sense. However, it would make sense that Kobe, a future death faker, would want to get some pointers from a death faker. But anyway, this is what Miles Mathis says. Every famous person I have researched so far has been a part of some hoax. So my assumption now is that almost every famous person who dies early or mysteriously has faked it for some reason. This should be the default assumption. Rather than assume what you're being told by the mainstream is true, you should assume it's false. If they tell you it's day, assume it's night. And I agree with this. The default assumption at this point, fake until proven real. Even if it's just some mundane CNN reporter who dies, I'm like, okay, probably nothing, but let me just look. Birthday 311, does it mean anything? I don't know. But if it's a highly publicized death, I assume there's some kind of spellcraft encoded into the name and date. Dewis in Paris says, I'm near convinced this realm wants us to wake up to the way it works. Well, there's pretty much exit signs everywhere. It shows you exit the matrix. But I'm not sure if that's the case. It seems like there's this almost inertia, this tendency. Perhaps maybe some can't. I've been thinking about this idea of how vampiric this whole thing is, this whole place is. The idea of Loosh, for example. that your soul is being taxed, that you're tithing to Big Brother's black cube, whatever that is, whatever entity you're feeding. I've been thinking about this idea that there's this energetic exchange, and it occurred to me that maybe what we refer to as NPCs, maybe there is a large swath of the population who don't have a connection to anything higher, but simply operate at the terrestrial level. Maybe there are soulless people in the sense that they're people of the matrix, people who never incarnated but are rather facets, perhaps even here for our enmeshment for various purposes. That's assuming there's a purpose to this whole place. But yeah, there is something about this quote realm, to use that word, that would suggest that it's like a puzzle, perhaps something we're meant to figure out. I don't think it's random. I don't find anything to be, I mean, I understand randomness, but what I mean is, I do think there's some intrinsic order to it all. And I think that the big lie is that it's disordered, it's chaos, and we're just, apes with big egos. I really don't believe that. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But I don't want to spend my life operating on a false assumption, one that just assumes the lowest, the most diminished view is the one. It's very self-defeating. I'd rather just operate on the presupposition that maybe intuition, precognition, telepathy is an indicator that there's more to this place than the terrestrial vehicle. Okay, continuing. Duas in Paris says, too much is too much on the nose for events not to be interpreted as clues. Yes, yes. Look, there's breadcrumbs being dropped to mislead people. There are intentional, planted stories, conspiracy theories for the people who are awake, and that's why I'm drifting away from truth reveal, is I feel like there's a lot of people whose intuition points them in the right direction, and they get led to these various Pied Pipers. And what I'm trying to do is bypass that. But I do get the indication here that, yes, this place may be some kind of a realm, some kind of a prison or a puzzle of some kind. Perhaps the purpose of it may even be for, I guess, the evolution of sentience. Maybe even transcendence might be built into this. All right, let's continue going through this Elvis piece. Again, just the main thing here is this. And this is from Miles Mathis. Every famous person that he's researched has been a part of some kind of a hoax, and he's assuming, and it's a safe assumption, that any kind of these highly publicized deaths is likely just fake. Now, where do they go? I don't know. Crisis Actor Island, like that movie Utopia. So right now, I would suggest that Kobe Bryant and the president of Iran are having a corona with George Floyd and Derek Chauvin out at some island watching this whole thing. All right, you're calling. If you want to call in, the number is 563-999-3664. Kind of open topics. I was in contact with the process server today. Just a quick update on the trial. I have a service address for the defendant, and I believe it's going to be served at the office tomorrow. So that's a major leap forward. And even if he manages to somehow dodge it, which I don't think he will, but if he does, it would have to be deliberate, and the court will likely take note of that. But if he dodges it, the court will assist me in having him served by other means. So we're making a lot of progress. Not to mention a second amendment to the complaint, which further clarified what my intentions here are. And my intentions are to hold Big Brother accountable for their unfair trade practices. Me and My Drone says, chillin' like villains. Yeah, I think so. And are they really villains? People get mad about stuff like who did 9/11. They want to get mad at who did it. Well, it was done by Stanley Kubrick. It's like who shot Kennedy? Stanley Kubrick. These things are movies. Nothing to get mad about. Like maybe you could be mad that we're tricked, that we've been deceived, that we're engaged in a mind war, that we're totally mind controlled. But when you subtract the carnage, when you subtract the atrocity and the terror, it kind of takes the sting out of it. And I think the whole point of it is they want you to be triggered to go after whatever target they point you at. And I'm not triggerable at this point. I'm not chasing any specific group. I'm not on a witch hunt. I'm actually totally outside of their game. The game is for losers. And by that, what I mean is the game is rigged. You can't win. It's unwinnable. And so when you enter the game, as they say in war games, the only winning move is not to play. And that's really where I'm at. I refuse to play a losing, rigged game. And by losing, I mean when you enter into the mainstream view or the alternative view and you're in the political horseshoe, you're operating in this alternate reality game where all these things that we know aren't true are true, like fake nukes, bolt cut shooters, Reddit radicalized trans shooters, climate change, chemtrails, all these things that are just hyperstitions are now real. Aliens, military age men invading your town, all these things that they conjure up. And it's not just like they're crying wolf. I mean, I know a lot of them have good intentions. They got to warn you about the bad things that are happening. But you have to also consider the deleterious effects on your psyche, your mind, and your body by having a lot of paranoid fears that aren't rooted in reality. Nocebo effects, psychosomatics, and stress itself. Red pills are toxic. And by refusing the red pill paranoia and rejecting the mainstream brainwashing, I believe that you could achieve something of a peace of mind regarding the wider world. And that's really where I'm at. I'm not worried about the world ending. And that's not an absurd statement, because if you believe the science, if you're following mainstream views, then you should be convinced that we're in the end times, that Gaia has had it with us. And if it's not Gaia, it's going to be some kind of planet-killing asteroid. So if you're not convinced we're in the end times, you're not paying attention. It's the establishment view, and I reject that. All right, I'm going through your comments. Lloyd Laney says, Psyop Palooza First Edition. Etherbound Metascript has got to be as thick around as Chris Farley. Yeah, this is really the case. The bread and circuses of our time, it's Netflix and EBT. They have the masses inundated with food and entertainment. And the entertainment is actually an act of war. It's suppression, soul suppression, mind suppression. I think this is how the human race has been cowed. It has been brought to its knees. Duck and cover, duck under your desk, mask up, mask your mind, be afraid of ideas, be afraid of everything that has people wanting to lock down represents a victory for Big Brother in taming the human animal. We are hackable animals. They hacked us a long time ago. And they've only accelerated it. I mean, we're looking at Netflix as a perfect example of how they merge the news with the entertainment with predictive and concurrent programming. And you just look at who's behind it. A relative of Edward Bernays and Sigmund Freud. We're talking manipulators of the mass mind, individuals who've come to understand how much of our behaviors are influenced by our emotions and subconsciously motivated. And that's how they tap into us. Netflix purchased all of the direct messages and browser histories of Facebook users. So they know everything about us. They're target marketing us with psyops. Okay, let's go through my notes. We talked about this. Oh, yes. So the individual who was calling into question the existence of atomic bombs with Joe Rogan is, and this is from Jay Diggs, Mark Andreessen, an internet pioneer who wrote one of the early web browsers, Mosaic, and co-founded Netscape. He's worth billions. So it's interesting that this character would be pushing fake nukes. So I didn't know who he was. I thought he was just some kook. But for someone like this to be pushing fake nukes, showing that they're blowing up dollhouses, laughing about the camera. Look, it's more than just an argument from incredulity. The people who believe in nukes are ridiculous and let them believe it. It's a god. It's a god construct. It's a war god. There's a few god constructs that I just reject. Like one of the ways that I examine the world state, or rather the world stage and the media is like the media is the church. It is the one world religion, and it has provided us with a neo-eschatology, heaven, a version of the saved and the unsaved. Oh, did you take the injectable Eucharist? Then you're not saved. You're still, quote, sinful. And they've also introduced God constructs. And so in addition to Gaia, we've got this war god, this destroyer god, the beast, Apollyon, the nuke. The atom bomb is the beast of Revelation 9:11. It is Apollyon, the destroyer, Abaddon. It is the deep sea challenger, which is the name of the submersible that James Cameron was in when he went down to to examine the Titanic. So JC, the Challenger, Jesus Christ. It's a fascinating story when you get into the subtext here. It's biblical. Our modern worldview and our modern God constructs are all templated off of the archaic worldview. It's Mystery Babylon dressed up like the Jetsons. But anyway, I find it kind of interesting that, yes, Mark Andreessen, software engineer, would be involved in attempting to discredit the nuke with Joe Rogan. And I was going through the comments, and a lot of people were really put off. Like, it's one thing to question the moon landings, but questioning the nukes, that's another level. And I would say it does a lot more damage that way. I mean, faking the moon landing, yeah, people can get through that, but faking the nuke, well, we have been in a collective, more or less a circular firing squad, like a hostage situation to world leadership since the advent of the atom bomb. We've been on the precipice of total annihilation and destruction. We've been collectively trauma bonded with big government, and they can't let that go. It's just too much power. Do us in Paris says astronauts to the moon. He. Yeah, exactly. It's always been a joke. And I think there's a lot of reasons why they would fake it. For one, it's a confirmation of their paradigm. Their science has been validated. You know, like Jesus walked on water. What does that prove? Son of God. Man walks on the moon. It validates the science. It's a miracle, in other words. And that's what it looks like to me. They achieved the miraculous. And it dragged us all onto the stage. We're now in the movie together. Just like the atom bomb. The atom bomb, the moon landing, 9/11, COVID, these are all things that dragged us all in onto the world stage. Now we're all in the alternate reality game. And what I mean by that is now we're all operating in a world where we have certain presuppositions, things that we can't personally verify or attest to, but that we take on faith. So if they told us that there's a comet that's going to hit us in 33 days, and all of the governments, all the nations declare national emergencies, and we all move into bunkers, if they declare it and we believe it, we're all acting like it's true, it's an alternate reality game, especially if it's fake. Think about the movie The Village, where the villagers are convinced that there are monsters in the woods, and that's because the elders lie to them, and the elders put on costumes and act really scary and keep everyone under control. See, it's an alternate reality game where they insert into your world things that don't exist. Hyperstitions, superstitions made real through collective agreement. So we live in a hyperstitious world. Well, most of us do. I'd say a small percentage of us have broken out of it. But it's enabled by the closed system of the worldview as displayed through the screen. So if they show it on the screen, it's real. If it doesn't show up on the TV screen, it's not real. It's pretty simple. It's like a Bible, a holy book. In fact, I describe the mass media as the world church. The Bible would be the screen, the monolith, the ubiquitous screen as filtered by Big Brother, and they're not done yet. I often compare Elon Musk to Constantine because of this neo-feudalism and space communism, but another aspect to it is this consolidation of the worldview as we get rid of non-canonical texts, heretical stuff, get rid of anything by conspiracy theorists, as we cleanse the internet of mind junk, mind viruses, we are arriving at what will be the state-sanctioned, authorized world view. And anything that doesn't match that won't make it to your screen. And that's what I mean by suggesting that your iPhone, your computer, is the new Bible. They're just in the process again of consolidating and getting the official version. R. Cook says, love the recent Blue Origin launch. Never see the touchdown as usual. Is it? See, they're pretty lazy about it. I look at their launches. It tends to look cartoonish. And many have compared Blue Origin's Blue Origin rocket to Dr. Evil's rocket. And you know, Jeff Bezos and Dr. Evil laugh the same. They look the same. And yes, they both have these phallic rockets. And the capstone on his rockets are very pronounced. And I would posit here that the capstone on the rocket means the same symbolically as the golden tip of the obelisk. It represents the pharaohic elite. And so in this case, the capstone has a blue feather. It's like the blue bloods. But yes, Jeff Bezos also is Nimrod on the world stage. And he went to space, or 50 miles up, close enough, I guess. He went up there on July 20th, 2021, anniversary of the Apollo landing. And the Apollo, first man on the moon, was July 20th. They took off on the 16th. But he launched at 9:11 a.m. So I thought that's interesting, a 9/11 and an Apollo 11 reference here. And this was just days after, 9 days after Richard Branson took his space plane up there. And he launched 7/11/21, which is the 42nd anniversary of Skylab falling. So taken together, space plane, Skylab falling, 42 years, launching from the Earth at 9/11 on the anniversary of Apollo. What I kind of take from that is Nimrod ascends into heaven and sets foot. And the space plane thing is clearly a reference to 2001: A Space Odyssey. And the space plane scene has been compared to the first plane hitting the tower on 9/11. Just more connections between 2001: Space Odyssey and 9/11. In fact, I'll put that up on the screen. It's a great article. It's by chartword.com. And what he shows here is how Stanley Kubrick loaded 2001: Space Odyssey with predictive programming for 9/11. So if you're looking at the screen, it's the most iconic image of 9/11. So this is actually the second one. It's Flight 175 heading towards the South Tower. And this is being compared to Kubrick's space plane approaching the twin wheels of the space station. Now, same director, same iconic image. And again, on the anniversary of a space station falling, Branson went up in his ridiculous space plane. 9 days later, at 9/11, Bezos launches. Bezos representing Nimrod, builder of the tower. And of course, the new tower that replaced the twins is 1,776 feet, a reference to the Tower of Babel. Okay, let me go through your comments here. Nimrod is another word for dimwit, says Mango. Yeah, well, Nimrod is one of these biblical characters. I think in Masonic lore, you know, he has some significance there. And when I say these dates, I'm referring to dates that go according to their own made-up histories. 1776 AL, 120 years after the flood. I'm not saying I believe these things. Mango says, time to flip and rip the script. Now, that's a question here. You know, it's really a question. Can the script be changed? Can you modify it? If they're writing our history in advance, if they are prefabricating everything, if it's all a plot, is there anything that you can or should do about it? And I'm reading a book right now. I'm halfway through it. I'm going to review it in full. And it's called In the Country of the Blind. And it's about a secret society that attained control over the collective psyche through hijacking history. And they invented a science called Cleology, Cleo being the Greek muse of history. And they learned how to manipulate the masses as though it's just a singular entity. And the character in the book, the protagonist, who's a journalist, finds out about this inadvertently. And she and her circle of friends who found out about it are all killed off. Well, they're targeted by the hit squads of the perpetrators. But she survives. I'm halfway through the book, and she's being recruited. And the rationale is given that they want to create a society of techno-peasants who are educated enough to follow the orders that they are trained to follow without any kind of resistance. That techno-peasants was the word, and that the system was designed to work for at least 5 generations, where people would be completely immersed with memes that would render their lives more or less meaningless and shallow, but for our own good. A sort of a benevolent dictatorship, and it's just the standard MO of the power elite. Now, this book's science fiction, although I think it describes things as they are, and it kind of builds on the theme covered in the Newsbenders. But the argument is, are we better off letting man guide itself through chaos, or should we steer it in this other direction? And it looks like that's kind of where we already are. Brave New World. Dewis Impera says the illusion of script change exists just as the illusion of free will exists. So even if your script appears to have changed, the change was scripted from the get-go. So I have a few ideas about how this thing works. I'm not 100% sure, but you have a bit of freedom. You can see things as they are. You can immerse yourself in the truth. But at the end of the day, their lies get the final stamp of approval. Everything that we say is non-canonical, heretical. We are apostates, heretics perhaps. So I'm well aware that, who knows, in 50 years, everything we're saying might just be scrubbed as they perfect their system. And it's nearly perfect. People have been rendered visually illiterate. It's nice that Joe Rogan can look at the footage of the atom bomb blowing up Barbie doll houses and look at it and say, hey, that looks fake. But it might be too little too late. And another thing to consider is the believers outnumber the knowers by just orders of magnitude. The believers are the knee-jerk conformists who don't have any doubts about what they're seeing on the screen. And just like any religious believers, they become fanatic. You can't reason with them. You can't disabuse them of their God constructs. So we live in a world of believers, a world of ignorance. The idea that we're going to change it or steer it in some direction, it's an experiment. Like what we're embarking on here is something of an experiment. We're testing things, and we have tested things before. How malleable is it? There's a worldview monopoly, and they clearly do not like competition. It's the new monotheism, and I don't think that there is any kind of legitimate challenge to it, because there's no platform from the off-world stage, from the deprogrammed. There's programming and alternate programming. Shadows on the wall, alt shadows. But there's no platform for the deprogrammed. It hasn't been allowed to aggregate. Well, until now. So now I'm kind of curious to see, because I'm looking at this properly. This is a very bad, obnoxious presence in our life. It's this state religion, God constructs designed to just freak out people who are rendered powerless and paranoid in their ignorance and their naivete. And shouldn't we want to push back at least a little to see? The unmediated mind says, I identify as a cyber peasant myself. Here's what I would like to do. I would like to amalgamate as many non-believers. See, I don't need believers. Believers have the wrong operating system. Their epistemology is screwed up and inverted. Their head is through the screen. What we want are non-believers. We want to foment a culture of non-belief, which requires a great deal of irreverence. You have to be willing to slaughter sacred cows and not care. You have to be willing to say fake dead kids' lives don't matter. You have to be willing to challenge or call out the bluff of the various people who reflexively defend mass media. Look, if you're defending mass media, you're not a devil's advocate. If you're saying maybe you guys are wrong, maybe it's not all fake, no, you're a media advocate. We're the devil's advocates here. We're the only skeptics. And even among the skeptics, among truthers, it's not pure. You know, we're moving into a pure state. We have to quarantine and ensure that we're all in agreement at the very basic premise that we've established. Our basic, stable, philosophical posture is suspension of judgment. And what we're doing is we're going to show that it's possible to be non-believers. Non-believers are just people who know what they know and have a bunch of questions, whose curiosity hasn't been stultified by false explanations. So we have a lot of questions, but we're not just sitting on the question marks, we're actually actively seeking to answer them. So seekers rather than believers. It's a far more active position, and I think that the number of seekers and non-believers is far greater than we would ever think by looking at the world stage, because there's no representation. And I think what we can do is we can make a big enough scene, make enough noise, make a big enough impression that will get all of the auto-hoaxers on the raft. And once we have a good number, I think it will organically metastasize, and it'll fill in that void where atheism, objectivism, and skepticism should be. There's a huge vacuum. And I'm not saying that I'm an atheist. What I'm saying is that we have that religion is like it's like an operating system built around God constructs. And we need a series of arguments against its fallacious arguments. So the atheists today are not really atheists. They've accepted the new God constructs. You find me an atheist, they believe in global warming. I mean, that's like believing in Noah's myth. They've just accepted a new iteration of the old myths. So they're faux atheists. What I'm saying is that we need a methodology for deconstructing their God constructs, and that comes with skepticism. It comes with recognizing what media is. But the number of non-believers with question marks will grow organically once we get this ball rolling, and it's moving. The tank is moving. But interestingly, look back at the latest Batman movie. Who was the villain, the bad guy? It was the Riddler. And what was his symbol? Question marks. They've been demonizing that for a long time. And that's because, of course, question marks represent your first level of self-defense, psychic self-defense. Your mind has an immune system. So they give you some bad idea, and you hit it with a question mark. Now, if you don't have any question marks, if they've taken away your skepticism, what are you? Well, you're a portal. You're just a receptacle for memes, for mind viruses. In other words, no mental immune system, aka MAIDs, mind aids. Daniel Moore says, a room full of skeptics in agreement? Yes, absolutely. Every skeptic would agree that it would be fallacious to trust what you see on the screen as evidence. Every skeptic should agree that extraordinary claims should be attended with extraordinary evidence. Every skeptic should agree that the pathologically lying media should not be considered an argument from authority. Every skeptic would also agree that you would be remiss if you didn't include in your assessment in media the well-known, well-established existence of psychological operations, perception management, and other ways of rigging reality. So yes, skeptics agree. That's not a controversial statement or idea. We should be agreeing. We agree that reality is not fluid. We agree that reality exists. We agree that the screen that we're all propped in front of 24/7 is not a window to the world, but a filter. That the news media is not there to inform you, but to conform you. Dewis in Paris says, I notice that younger people don't even bother with question marks when they write questions. Well, that's the level of meme warfare. They get rid of the words that you would need to articulate the prison. They would get rid of anything, rather. It could be a symbol. I mean, I've been saying for some time that they're coming for the question marks. Blue helmets, UN troops kicking down your door, 3 a.m., ripping the question marks off, and then they're going to put them in some big pile and just burn them all. And then they won't even be on the next version of your iPhone or smartphone. Having an inflection at the end of a sentence might be considered a hate speech. You just hate speeched. Sounded like you were asking a question. I mean, there really isn't any reason to be asking questions, considering that they give you all the answers. Why would you have any doubts? Now, what we're doing is we are amassing an army of skeptics, and then we will turn our attention to these philosophical conundrums. I mean, I'm not anti-media. I've really coined this phrase, parallel media. If you go to parallelmedia.org, I have something of a manifesto there for what our objective is here. I want to emphasize that we're inactivists, that you're not anti-war if you're still a believer. Because you have to realize that it's just like a holy war. We're living through religious wars, worldview warfare. And if you're not a conscientious objector from that, you can't call yourself anti-war. The only anti-war position is the position of anti-Psy-war. And you're not anti-Psy-war if you're pro or anti any of the major issues of the day. You got to be anti-anti as well as anti-pro. The News is Fake 4 says, if you believe in lies by logical contrast, you believe in truth, the question becomes, what is your source or standard of truth? Well, the thing is, the mainstream has been revealed as a bunch of liars. We understand. Mainstream liars. But the truthers are telling the alternate version or the reaction to those lies. And it's not the same thing as truth. And what we have is we have comparable narratives. And each side thinks the other side is a liar. Oh, they're liars, they're conspiracy theorists. But they're both telling versions of the same thing. The truth is outside of it. And a few other points about this. It's how we arrive at truth. We don't arrive at truth by trusting the news. That makes you a believer, and believers are all liars. The world stage will make you a liar. You will lie to yourself, you'll lie to others, you'll internalize logical fallacies, and you'll be a liar without knowing it. My objective is to take away plausible deniability. If you're going to be a believer, you're going to have to confront the fact that you're also likely lying. Knowers should have a presence on the world stage. We're in the age of information. Why are we so clueless? The unmediated mind says not everything has to be thrown out, just examine for faulty information and logical fallacies. Yeah, what we're doing here is we're throwing out the basic. It's not about this set of news events are fake and these ones are real. It's about what media is and what it has always been. It has always been an instrument of government, but what 9/11 has revealed, what 2020 revealed, what the space program reveals is that there is only one government. That's the big conspiracy. There's only government. It's already one. It's already one religion. It's already one world order. It's always existed. You have all these town criers crying wolf, like New World Order's coming, World War III is coming. Yeah, the World War III is already here. It's the mind war. It's the total usurpation of our subconscious, of our worldview, the worldview monopoly, the alternate reality game of which there's no opt-out. Yeah, they already won. You can relax. You really can relax. You can think your way out of this, but you can't fight your way out. There's no point in lining up behind Proud Boys or Antifa. To me, this is a philosophical question more than anything. It's somewhat ivory tower. And I get flack from truthers who think that if you know what they know, you would be digging a bunker. You'd be getting your ammo. And I'm like, no, reach for your popcorn. The world's not going to end. The threat of the thing is worse than the thing itself. If they can convince you that the world's going to end next week and they can always move it forward, you will always be cowed. You will always be scared. You'll be scared and you'll be blaming the other side. They're going to bring about the end. And both sides do it. Each side thinks the world's going to end because what the other guys are doing. They're both scared. Okay, let's continue. I had a lot of comments I wanted to get to on my video on the ISS. So I'm putting together a IPR deep dive on the International Space Station. And I'm getting a lot of great comments. So let's start with this one. Flat Fact says, the ISS is allegedly a ship in space, but the interior is a mess. I spent a number of years full-time on a boat. I also went on board numerous other boats during that time. Boats and ships require surveys for insurance. A ship will not pass a survey if safety requirements are not met. The ISS would fail a survey. On a real ship, all wires and cables, and behind the walls there are access panels. Boats move, weight is always considered. One would not want to accidentally trip on a cable, get injured, or choke. Compare the ISS to every other vehicle that people move in. Airline cockpit, all wires and cables behind panels, your car. I've mentioned this mess before. One person said it would be a hassle to undo a panel in an emergency. Yes, it is a big hassle to turn the handle on an access panel and take it off or remove 4 screws. Oceans can be rough and you can get thrown around. In the ISS, they are shown floating around. You could not find one naval vessel on Earth whose interior is a big mess like the ISS. The highly trained and not lazy tech individuals on those ships would not consider it a hassle to remove an access panel to repair something. And those are very old solar panels. How much power would these long outdated panels generate? There's a lot more to this one. What I'm going to do with this comment and a few others is I'm going to read them in their entirety, and I will be accompanying these with photos to describe what the person is talking about here. But yes, I'm working on what will be like a 90 to maybe even 2-hour long takedown of the International Space Station, which I'll get done this month. I have a lot of content. I'm just in the process of putting it all together. And I want to raise questions and bring up new arguments, because the professional glurfs, you know, the ones who defend the globe earthers, the glurfs, they're always fighting flat earthers. And it's like, well, this is belief system versus belief system. Two people, they have their opinions. These are models. But neither side can test their own claims. So it never goes anywhere. But I think with this space station becoming a debate, if we can make it the subject of debate, screw Apollo 11. Nobody cares about Apollo 11. Let's do the space station, because it's there right now. And there's a lot of arguments that support it that are easy to take down. And a lot of people lie. And I want to be able to call out why they lie and how. Like, what makes people say, I think I saw the ISS? Well, that's a non sequitur fallacy. It's the same thing as saying, I went camping and I think I heard Bigfoot. No, you heard an animal. You heard a bear. You heard a raccoon. You did not hear Bigfoot, because Bigfoot has not been demonstrated to exist with evidence. Similarly, you saw a light in the sky. You can't say it was a UFO. You know, it has to be man-made. Non-man-made craft have not been proven to exist. So you can't just throw it in there as though it's a multiple choice and it could have been there. It's as likely as the others. No, Bigfoot, raccoon, the likelihood of seeing Bigfoot over the raccoon, these are not equivalent, not even close. It doesn't belong in the same realm of possibility. So there's a lot of bad argumentation. A lot of people who used to claim they would see the space station no longer make that claim anymore. Once I informed them that the Earth has a shadow. If you believe in the ball Earth, you believe in its shadow. If you believe in its shadow, then you have no business talking about low Earth orbit objects being viewed in the middle of the night. It's impossible. Commenter asks, are those penguins on the tank smoking 5G. Yeah, what is going... Okay, that's some kind of plasma weapons, these wrenches. If you're looking at the screen, it's a futuristic blue tank with a boombox, a bunch of turrets, and some kind of wrench plasma weapons. So the theme here, the purpose of it is the think tank. Now, our think tank is, of course, essentially incorporating everything into it technology-wise. So we're cutting edge. And the idea with these penguins, of course, is the penguin is our mascot, more or less, because it's the perfect representative of the outsider, the fringe. If anybody knows what's at the edge, it's those who live at the bottom of the alleged ball, or at the edge and perimeter of the plane. There are a few other qualities penguins have that make them, I think, relevant for our conversations, like, for example, rafting. They form a raft on the water. So here we are on the sea of irrelevance. The masses are submerged. They don't know what's real and what's fake unless they are told. But we have this raft, a network of individuals who are above the sea of irrelevance, and we don't lose that continuity. They're also the deepest diving birds, and I'm referring to these videos we're doing on various subjects like the ISS as deep dives. They also have a way of forming heat pockets by putting their beaks in and then breathing in a circle, which is also conspiring against the darkness and the ice. Darkness is ignorance, ice is censorship. They live in a very inhospitable environment, and I would say that we do too, out here on the fringe, deplatformed, demonetized, marginalized, impugned, etc. So it's a perfect mascot for what we're doing, and then additionally I incorporate the idea that these ones have reached the singularity. There's a backstory, but let's see here. Thirst for Truth says KB, oh yeah, Karen B claims she could smell Bigfoot from 33 feet away. Yeah, she had a picture of a Bigfoot footprint in her backyard, and she claims she could smell it. Now, wasn't Stavely living with her at the time? As far as the Bigfoot, though, like, why is it always a foot? How about some footprints? Follow him. No, it's just 1 foot. Makes no sense to me. Unless he's some kind of monopod. Some big, freaky, hairy thing with 1 leg, but no sightings have backed that up. Tominoid says, but with the ISS, someone sees a light in the sky. Either it's man-made or it's not. True. However, kind of like a lot of people claiming that they've seen military jets spraying special sprays to block the sun, there's no pictures. I've had so many people say, I saw the ISS and it matched the app. Where's your picture? Or I ask them, what date? What longitude? What latitude? I don't know. Well, I'm sorry, but you would know. And there's a few tricks that need to be unveiled here. For example, ISS transits. Ask yourself, this is a question that I will be asking. Why are the only transits we see in front of the sun or in front of the moon? Because if it's in front of the sun, there's no eyewitness. You have to use a solar filter. If it's in front of the moon, there's no eyewitness because it's at night. You're having to catch a silhouette. These are easy to fake. They're totally fakeable. So I don't think they should be admissible as evidence that there's a transit. Another thing, I've been comparing underwater scuba diving videos, like late night scuba diving, oil rig at night in the dark with a flashlight. And when you look at water through, we're talking like 50 feet underwater with a flashlight or spotlight, the light diffuses. The light actually doesn't go as far, obviously, because the medium. Well, the light loss that you see with scuba divers looking at manta rays at night, for example, is the exact kind of light loss you see on the spacewalks. Not all the spacewalks. Some of them are done differently, and I'll go through the different ones, but you see, I can point to many examples, spacewalks or the docking of the Dragon capsule with the ISS. You'll see a lot of light loss, and it's 100% consistent with underwater. So knowing that they film the space station underwater, knowing the use of simulations and everything else, it's not hard to conclude that what's more likely. that space looks just like water and there's light loss, or that they're doing this underwater. And then you contrast the spacewalk video with the photography. And the still photography, it's crystal clear. You can see forever. So what's the difference between the still photography and the video? Again, underwater. Tomino, it says, even if it matched the app, how is that different from tracking any wandering star? Well, the thing is, the ISS supposedly orbits every 90 minutes. And there are many people who will say that there's an app that tracks it, but they never back it up. Like, if it was that easy, people would be doing selfies with the space station behind their head every night. Hey, space station's going to be here in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. You don't see it. There isn't anything up there. And then others will say, well, maybe it's a drone. Wrong answer. For this thing to reach the transit points to match the app, it would necessarily have to be in the frictionless environment of outer space, given its shape and size. A drone couldn't move that fast. And there's no visible propulsion. There's no evidence for the space station being up in space. There's some magic tricks that have a number of people convinced of it, but for the most part, it's the argument ad populum. Like, some people will say, I've never seen it, but a lot of people have. I actually get that from people. A lot of people have seen the light, so I'm sorry, that's not evidence. Not even close. It's a bad argument. If you're going to accept that, well, a lot of people have seen the curve on the airplane, so I guess we're on a ball. Ad populum, another logical fallacy. We have to scrub our minds of these logical fallacies and loaded questions. Spacewalks, transits, CGI, augmented virtual reality glitches, their hair issues, microgravity pockets where they drop things and they hit the ground. There's quite a lot to take down. And then some will suggest they've seen Starlink satellites, and I kind of doubt that greatly, although it's fakeable. And I will point to this in the documentary Needles in the Sky, this Air Force project. Before Sputnik, the Air Force was already simulating satellites using airplanes and flashlight bulbs for the benefit of astronomers. So they've been simulating and faking space and satellites before there were satellites. And let me put this in my notes. The Apollo 11 flight director said that by the late 60s, the simulation was indistinguishable from the real thing from the control room. So we've already crossed that line. Dewis in Paris says the sky might be a screen after all. Like a big planetarium. Okay, let's continue. And now here's a question. Is the sky flat? Are the stars on a plane? Is there an astral plane? Because here we have to get rid of assumptions. So if you're going to say there is no curve, okay, well then, if there's no curve, then we're ruling out an edge. Then the stars, the sun, the luminaries wouldn't be going beneath the plane. So they're always above the plane. Now, we can rule out then the assumption that they're on a sphere, or that they're arranged in the manner as described in heliocentrism. So my question is, if you're asserting a flat plane, are you also asserting a flat sky, an astral plane? And notice it's astral plane, it's not astral sphere. Lean Dion says all of it is from early sci-fi writers. Violet Pengon says, even according to their own bullshit, shouldn't it already be destroyed from space junk and space dust? Sometimes the hoax is given away by what is conspicuously absent but should be there, and they're very minimalistic. But if space encompassed the distances they say, and was comprised in the manner in which they say it is, then why aren't there space clouds? I cannot see the horizon on a windy day 8 miles away. It's just dust. And I know there's more dust between my eyeballs and the nearest planet or star, and yet, despite millions and millions of miles with cosmic dust and debris and asteroids and everything else, we never have any like temporary star blockages. There's no stars being occulted by clouds, entire constellations. Like, I believe that there should be enough cosmic dust in the aggregate that every night we should be able to see dark patches in the sky. But we don't. Why is it clear? Where's the space clouds? There's tons and tons of cosmic dust hitting the Earth every day. So I think that's kind of something that should be missing. I have a few other ideas about what's wrong with everything. Ryler05 says, anybody that's been on a plane that's been to 35,000 or 30,000 feet up, look out the window, would automatically know we live on a flat plane. You're higher than any mountain, there's no curvature. Well, people will see pictures of climbers on Mount Everest with a GoPro lens, and they'll say, take that, flat earthers. I'm like, okay. Well, Mount Everest is what, under 9,000 meters? It's like obviously a GoPro lens, but they don't need a lot of evidence. They say they've seen the curve. I call them curverts. Jimmy Kimmel once claimed he could see the curve from his backyard, just looking at the Hollywood Hills, looking at the ocean. The argument from ancient Greeks. Oh, the ancient Greeks knew. Okay, well, they didn't tell the Chinese, who had a flat cosmos until what, 17th century? And let's not forget, the first person to predict a total solar eclipse, Thales of Miletus, was like suggesting, anyway, that the universe was just infinite water, a big ocean of water, flat, that the world was flat like a shield. It's not even about shape with me anyway. I could care less. I would love for it to be a big spinning ball. Just prove it to me. Don't give me bad evidence. I'll hang on to my questions. I'm a shape agnostic. I'm not convinced. I'm going with John Dee at the moment, actually. If I had to choose, I'm not a glurf. I'm not a flurf. What am I? Whatever John Dee was onto, I think I'm leaning that direction. So it's not really simulation. But although simulation theory does cover the same grounds using modern terminology, but it's more like this idea that the realm we live in is some kind of a plane of existence, and that it's got levels of density, and we exist at this low level, but that we have aspects that are transcendent, that are more or less cut off. But the point of it is, of course, the role of magic, the purpose of magic is understanding the relationship between the self and the universe, and he's a magician. And his system of magic suggested that it's something of a plane, and that it is in some kind of a feedback loop with the experiencer. And this is greatly in contradiction to his role as an advisor to Mercator. And again, he and Mercator had those letters back and forth talking about this magnetic rock at the North Pole. And he's not some minor character in history. He coined the phrase British Empire, the original 007. Salty says, I think I'm the reincarnation of John Dee. You might be. I don't know how this works, reincarnation, but I think it's intrinsic into their symbolism, so it suggests that there is such a thing. Now, the first time I heard of John Dee, and this is when I first started having like waves of synchronicities, I didn't really know who he was. I was in Alabama, I was in basic training, and after like 4 weeks they give you a few hours off so you can take a cab. And so I went into Birmingham or something. So I get in a cab and I'm driving, and we are cut off by a vehicle, and for some reason the vehicle in front of us, it's like another cab, and the number was 777. And that really stood out to me. And I noticed out of the corner of my eye, there's a big tractor there. And it said, John Dee. Now it's John Deere, but the full name was obscured. So I see John Dee and 777 at the same time, which doesn't mean anything in itself. Well, then I walk into a bookstore, and the first thing I see on the shelf that catches my eye is a book with 777 on the spine. And it's 777 and Other Kabbalistic Writings of Aleister Crowley. And I open it up to the introduction, immediately to a page where he's talking about this astrologer, magician, John Dee. and his scrying mirrors. So I just kind of bought the book based on that, but that's the first time I heard about him. And so I've been fascinated by this character for some time. I don't know how seriously to take the idea that he's communicating with angels. It could all be code. I haven't read all of the writings in detail, but I've read enough to understand how their system works. They also have something else other than that. There's this concept that he had of the Trinity, but they have instead of Trinity, they add a fourth. I may do a deeper dive onto John Dee here soon. But the idea, of course, of a plane and these 4 watchtowers and these levels, like the astral plane, that kind of terminology comes from John Dee. And he also carried around an iPhone, a proto-iPhone, a polished black scrying mirror. All right, let's continue going through your comments. Another 9/11 jumper. This is a very famous photo of a 9/11 jumper that none of us have seen. And yeah, it looks kind of like David Blaine. He's got his arms crossed over his chest. Looks just as real as all the other 9/11 jumpers. But why isn't this one more well known? Like the Falling Man. Like this guy didn't get fame after death. Well, this photo was taken by a famous photographer at the Twin Towers, but most people don't know because the guy who photographed it claims that he heard bombs in the towers and didn't see any planes. This photo was taken by a famous photographer at the Twin Towers. Most don't know his name. See the next post. Here we go.
Pensaste sería tu última foto.
Sí,
You took an award-winning photo.
precisamente cuando
His name is Bolivar Arellano. He barely survived, but he doesn't call them collapses. He says they exploded.
el edificio que explota, pues veo que el edificio empieza a caerse.
I saw how it started to crumble down. It's insane to believe I'll survive this. Thank God I survived. I'm standing in front of the building, and then it explodes.
Y yo estoy de espalda cuando
Same time as a controlled demolition done for theatrical purposes. You wouldn't need it. It would be overkill, and you might actually kill a crisis actor. And no crisis actors were killed in the making of that movie. Nobody died, nobody cried. No jumpers. It's all fake. So again, the guy who comes out saying, oh, I saw bombs, the fireman who came out, we heard explosions, actors, liars, giving you the alternative spin for those who aren't spellbound enough to fall for the mainstream version. So I don't look at these as whistleblowers or arriving at truth. I look at them as truth or chicken feed. Lean Dion says, committing hard to that Osiris risen pose while free falling. Yeah. Interesting pose. You know, speaking of that, I was just thinking about that movie A Man in Full, which is obviously based on Trump, and it's got Obama in it, and the Trump guy dies. And at the end of the movie, when he's on the ground, I don't know if it means anything, but his leg was twitching because he had this hydraulic knee. And I'll have to go back and look at it, but I'm pretty sure he was on the ground, almost like positioned like a swastika, which is very consistent with the writers of the show who apparently had Trump derangement syndrome. And there's another Trump movie that just came out called The Apprentice. And apparently some MAGA millionaire is mad about it because this is a Trump biopic. Controversial Donald Trump movie The Apprentice debuts at at Cannes. This is hilarious. So the guy who paid for it's mad, and I don't think he's gonna get his money back. Why is he mad? Because Trump rapes Ivana. They have a scene where he and according to some report, she claims she was, and then later says she wasn't. But anyway, yes, it shocks audiences. Here's from the Hollywood Reporter. There's no nice metaphorical way to deal with the rise of fascism. One of the most anticipated moments of the 77th Cannes Film Festival. Only Francis Ford Coppola's wildly ambitious swan song Megaopolis inspired more chatter. Okay, Francis Ford Coppola's movie, maybe worth talking about. He had some 9/11 predictive programming, and okay, check. He had this script for Megaopolis before 9/11. He took out a whole chapter because it was basically describing 9/11. But in the version that just came out, which I'm looking forward to watching, it has to do with Russian satellites falling from the sky. So there's something in there, predictive programming wise, there has to be, considering he had some 9/11 stuff in there. Several shocking moments late in the film, a scene depicting Trump's rape of his first wife, and a surgery room sequence showing Trump getting liposuction, drawing audible gasps from the premiere crowd. Okay, liposuction. Anyway, it's called The Apprentice, just came out. Some MAGA donor paid for it and didn't know it was going to be a hit piece. Apocalypse Now. Oh yes, Apocalypse Now. I'll have to go back and watch some of his films. These directors, I think these big directors are by default meta scripters, and I don't even think they know, or they even have to know, the full extent of their involvement in the psychological warfare operation, the theater of Psy-War. I would think that someone like Kubrick would be in the know, James Cameron 100%. If they're involved in space fakery, and I'd mentioned this the other day, and we're going to have to dive into this story as well, this whole behind the scenes of Tom Cruise, Stanley Kubrick. Because Tom Cruise, Scientology, Stanley Kubrick, NASA. There's a connection there. And then Kubrick's daughter is a Scientologist. So Scientology and NASAtology are both space religions. One is scammier, one has better special effects, one has better actors, but you know, they're both scammy space religions when it comes down to it. But it's highly significant. We'll do a deep dive into that. Alright, let's see here. Tominoid says they always love a based on a true story. Yes, well, people will remember something like a Mandela steal. That could have been it. It wasn't jet fuel. I thought maybe it was chemtrail juice, but chemtrails don't exist. It's not direct energy weapons, but Trump's blubber. Okay, let's move on. Solely Us on X saw this. He found this thing. It looks like a cicada, and we're still waiting on the two broods, aren't we? This man found...
And I found out as I was picking it up, if you squeeze that on the end on each end.
All right, sounds like a fire alarm. Dewis in Paris says bee genocide panic doing the rounds again. Oh yeah, bees are dying off. That one's old. I'm waiting for FEMA coffins to make another round. Salty says the brood already hatched here. They sound completely different from normal cicadas and have red wings instead of green. Three-body problem ended with a bunch of cicadas, so I think it may mean something. I don't know if this is real or not, just pointing it out. This guy found one. At least it didn't have a stinger on it. Like little Vax drones. This is a crowd in Portugal. This video has been making the round. Big light in the sky. Now, I've seen similar. I'm not saying it's fake, but I do want to point out, just because we're entering what I think will be a very psyop-rich summer, and the fake UFO things on the horizon, nukes, space lasers, it's all there on the menu. Like, we don't know what's going to be on the program next, but we know what's on their repertoire. So we also should be aware that it's entirely possible with this, quote, sky canvas technology to simulate and fake meteors, falling stars. There's a company called Star Ale, Space Entertainment Sky Canvas. Supposedly they do this from satellites. You can believe that if you want. They team up with Japan's space agency JAXA, and they use these little satellites and they drop their fireworks from the sky. I don't think that's the case. It's probably balloons or planes or something. But regardless, these things are very much fakeable. We need to start asking what isn't fakeable. Like the ISS, when they bring down the ISS, just like in the series The 100 on Netflix, season 1, episode 13, the space station falls. There's been so much predictive programming for it that when it falls, no one's going to question it. The movie ISS came out earlier this year on 119, highly significant. I'll be referencing that movie in my deep dive on the space station because I'll be contrasting the hair in space as represented in various movies and how it's represented on the ISS itself. Joe Rogan and Bart Sabreau. I mentioned this the other day. Bart Sabreau, gatekeeper, believes in space travel, even though he's debunked the moon landing for the most part. He's the guy who got punched by Buzz Aldrin. But his whole thing is that NASA has been blackmailed by China into giving away secret space tech to the Chinese space agencies. But anyway,
but they're not.
Here we're seeing this conversation merging aliens with AI. That they're not from outer space, but they're like interdimensionals, perhaps entering through our software.
UFOs are real and aliens are real, but they're not from outer space. And that's according to the top 2 UFO researchers after decades-long research. They're interdimensional and potentially fallen angels, disguising themselves because they're liars.
Okay, now, fallen angels, not extraterrestrials, interdimensionals. So this actually does tie in back to what we were getting to earlier with John Dee, who was claiming in his books and his writings and their experiments that they were getting communications from angels through these scrying mirrors. And others have posited that perhaps he was communicating with some very bad entities and that he was creating a portal through which they could enter this world. And they have these things called the Enochian calls, like these sequence of prayers or something, or incantations, that are supposedly meant to invite them in. And so this conversation about AI, interdimensionals, the black scrying mirrors, it's all kind of coalescing here.
Themselves because they're liars. Of something, like you said, can't be proven or disproven. I'm from this galaxy 300 light years away.
This is kind of what Tucker Carlson thinks. He thinks there's a spiritual element to it, and he thinks they've always been here, and he thinks that this is what's kind of documented in the Bible as like good and...
Now, this is all fascinating because before this was a development, I had suggested that when aliens arrive, the left will embrace them, and the right will call them demons. That the right-wing MAGA will go out there with their trucks and shotguns, Trump flags, and they will fire at the UFOs. That it's a partisan thing when they arrive. And I think I'm right about it. And now, since I've talked about that, Tucker and Joe Rogan and others have all brought out this talking point that it's good versus evil and aliens are demons.
This is what's kind of documented in the Bible as like good and evil. And
that's it, exactly. I mean, that's what's going on. And that's what I talk about. Where it talks about fallen angels interbreeding with humans, it's talked about in Genesis 6, and creating a race called Nephilim, who were men of renown, world leaders.
Could you interpret that as when you say interbreeding with humans? Now imagine if what they are is a form of artificial intelligence or a human-created intelligence that's not of biological origin, but it is a living thing. And that artificial life form is far superior intellectually to the biological life form. And the only way the biological life form can survive...
Okay, put down the pot brownie. I think I lost him there. All right, let's move on. Interesting notions. Look, I'm more inclined to think that aliens are just a modern way of describing other concepts. And by the way, the first person to spot a UFO, to see one, to report one, is Marjorie Cameron, who was hanging out with Jack Parsons, the warlock, and the science fiction writer L. Ron Hubbard, doing kinky stuff in the desert. and Satanism or something. And then a year later, she sees a falling light from the sky, a UFO. All right, let's move on. Joe Rogan auto-hoaxing nukes, though. That was the big story yesterday. I did not expect that. That was not on my bingo card. Let's see here. This is LeBron James, who says that there is no party like a P. Diddy party. So let's play that first. Ain't no party like a P. Diddy party. Sure he regrets this now.
Hey, everybody know ain't no party like a Diddy party, so.
Yeah, that's what's up. Yeah.
What do they call them? Freakouts? I'm still waiting for, video to leak as to what they're really doing at these parties, but I've heard some strange stuff. It's almost eclipsing the whole Epstein thing. But anyway, so LeBron James, who's a skull and bones, boule, Masonic, Illuminati sign flashing basketball player, is hanging out with Diddy. And now check this out. This is I believe she's a model or something. This woman claims that she was trafficked and held captive by LeBron James and didn't know where she was for a long time.
I ain't confused. I ain't on that shit. That nigga tried to kill me for real. I just fucking got out of that shit. I've been missing for almost like 2 years. I didn't even know where the fuck I was at. I do not fuck with LeBron James. That nigga's a trafficker, my nigga. That nigga is a trafficker. He is a fucking trafficker. He trafficked women in real time. That nigga stole all my money out of my bank account.
All right. He probably shops on Wayfair. No, it's somewhat believable, considering. Okay, this is a good one. I got this video sent to me by Conscious Daughter about Emmett Till. So the story behind Emmett Till, this is all the original Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin kicked off the BLM, but the civil rights atrocity, or the atrocity propaganda that really kicked it off was the face of the brutalized Emmett Till. And the mother insisted that he be given an open casket viewing so people could see the result of, hatred, etc. Interestingly, the person who started this, Caroline Bryant, is like a proto-Karen. And what happened is Emmett Till, like 14, opens the door for her, says something complimentary, she throws a fit, and then he gets lynched. Now, this is the story. But what was pointed out by Conscious Daughter is that Caroline Bryant was an actress. So here we have it. Emmett Till, the woman accused. Here we go. The woman accused is a registered 1950s actress with an IMDI Actors Hollywood Guild. You have script reading from the witnesses. Emmett's mother is photographed in unrealistic poses. Same with the woman who accused Emmett of his crime. This video explains how it's possible to make a fake death mask, as in wearing it at a casket or in a photo. So yeah, this was an open casket viewing, and I remember looking at this picture thinking, there's no way people believe that's real. It looks like, bad special effects, consistent with what you expect at the time. Script reading using cue cards.
I heard a voice at the door, and it said, "This is Mr. Bright," and said they wanted the boy that did the talk at money. And when I opened the door,
So Wednesday went by, Thursday went by, nothing. Friday we forgot about it.
So again, if you're not familiar with the story, it kind of got brought up last year because Carolyn Dunham died at the age of 88, around the time that Jamie Foxx was in the news. And Jamie Foxx is a very significant character, a person with the BLM. He was a big promoter of the Trayvon Martin brand, the martyrdom of Trayvon Martin. He was big in that psyop. And at the same time, he had performed as Django Unchained, which is like based on Nat Turner. So there's a lot of overlapping with these various characters, and she kind of came out into the news cycle. But anyway, this is a great breakdown of the Emmett Till story, that this is an ongoing psyop, nothing new about it. Atrocity propaganda as normal. And these photos are pretty bad, and these are what Conscious Daughter is focused on. I put a link to this and some of her other videos over at minds.com. I'm still watching a few of them.
Segregation happened. I know that racial injustice happened, so do not get me wrong when I say that it did not happen. But I'm saying the way the media portrayed it and the way they're doing it today is that they overhype it and they over-exaggerate it to get us hyped up to get the division going. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what's always been going on from the very beginning, since we were able to watch television, okay? Or read the media, okay? Now, I'm gonna let this documentary play, or I'm gonna let the clips play, excuse me.
Now, we're looking at the various characters in this thing exhibiting typical duper's delight, big payday, terrible acting, and then finally, there's an example here shown of the type of mask or the type of prosthetics you would use to create that.
But as you can see here, it's easily made. It can be done. It can be done. It could have been done. I'm not saying that that was the case. I'm just saying that it looks like it could have been a possibility. Okay? With that said and done, I'm going to go ahead and...
Now, the other video that I discussed from Conscious Daughter was the one about the Rodney King beating. And if you remember, the Rodney King beating takes place near this scene from The Terminator. And James Cameron recently revealed that they had recorded part of that beating, like, as they were making the Terminator movie. Which is like, just the timing of it is just strange, or coincidental. But consider this too. The James Cameron is consistently associated with 9/11 through his Titanic and through the Terminator movie, which has the 9/11, which I just mentioned that he was there for that. And also the Rodney King beating had all the same call numbers. 1 minute, 19-second beating hit 33 times. So there's this overlapping of the two, and I would suggest that James Cameron was likely the director of the Rodney King beating. This is where it's at. It says the photos from that case and the pics from the funeral. I'll say it. It looks fake. Yeah, I think it was fake. I think it was definitely fake. That's how they kick off a movement. These martyrs are all fake. And the thing with Jamie Foxx is intriguing because, again, Jamie Foxx, 55, dies, comes back from the dead. People think he's cloned. And then they cloned Tyrone comes out. And there's a direct connection between Tyrone and Tyree Nichols, the names. And these both relate to Hiram of Tyre, and they all connect to the same basic myth of the dying, resurrecting Hiram Abiff. But the 55-year-old Jamie Foxx, again, Jamie Foxx associated with BLM, and it was the 55th anniversary year of MLK's assassination. Now, Terry Nichols, who was beaten in a way that looked exactly like the Rodney King beating, his funeral and eulogy was at Mason Temple, where MLK gave his final speech. And of course, MLK's daughter was there. So you have these overlapping stories. The 55, the protesters of the cops who beat Terry Nichols shut down I-55. So the number 55, 55th year, I-55, a chunk of the sun falls off at the 55th latitude. It was a reoccurring theme, really culminating with Trump's arraignment on the 55th anniversary of MLK. And this is where the Trump-Moses connection comes in. MLK, Moses, the Promised Land, MAGA's Trump's Promised Land. They've been framing Trump as a martyr to be. And that's what we're waiting on. News is fake. Forces. Clones are fake in general. Oh yeah, clones are fake, but deep fakes are real. Hyper-realistic masks are real. And I always lean towards real over the hypothetical. And the clone thing never makes sense. However, it's a perfect cover story. You know, if you're using hyper-realistic masks where you can make multiple copies of a person, somebody could be coexisting in multiple places, foolproof disguise. And that's a technology used by intelligence. So if you're using this, how do you hide it? Well, you spread conspiracy theories about clones and reptilians and shapeshifters. That way, if anybody catches anything, they see any glitch, they're automatically led to the wrong explanations that make them look crazy. Phones are open for the next 15 minutes. If you want to call in, 563-999-3664. We're talking about Carolyn Bryant, actress, in the Emmett Till psyop. Now, this may be nothing, but I kind of glossed over this before. We were talking about truth or isms, truth or orthodoxies, and I was talking about fluoride in the water. How maybe I'm not scared of it anymore. I'm tired of carrying cases of water upstairs. Well, according to Wikipedia, and many of you have heard this before, there's a conspiracy theory that the communists put fluoride in the water. And from Wikipedia, quote, "The communist conspiracy argument declined in influence by the mid-60s, having been associated with irrational fear and paranoia. It was portrayed in Stanley Kubrick's 1964 Dr. Strangelove, in which the character General Jack the Ripper initiates a nuclear war in the hopes of thwarting a communist plot to sap and impurify the precious body fluids of the American people with fluoridated water." Fluoridated water was a theme in that, and they made a joke about it. Another satire appeared in the 1967 movie In Like Flint, in which a character's fear of fluoride in the water indicates that he's insane. In Like Flint. Now, I'm bringing this up because the pH was never adjusted, which caused the acidic water to reach lead, leaching lead from the ancient water pipes in Flint, Michigan. If you remember the whole drama about Flint, Michigan, and the water, and I believe it was Michael Moore, Cheeseburgers, Michael Moore, who did the Flint, Michigan activism about the water there. So it may be nothing, but you have this big story about the Flint water crisis, and then the Dr. Strangelove and In Like Flint both kind of tied into this, making a joke about it. But whatever the case is, I'm not sure. I'm seeing some kind of an interesting thread here between the Flint water crisis and In Like Flint. Just a follow-up to something I came across last week. We covered Donald Trump glitching out for 30 seconds, probably 33 seconds, at an NRA event. Then his antics at the podium, which made it look like he had just been shot. Ryler05 says, "The fluoride thing is easy to prove. All you got to do is test your tap water." Well, the theory is that fluoride is somehow causing you to lose IQ points. That was one of the talking points, that the fluoride heads, the fluoride stare. So you got to buy the water purifiers from InfoWars. Now, I don't believe that it's necessarily a thing, although I think if you consumed several tubes of toothpaste, you might get toxic levels of fluoride. But the idea that drinking fluoride is somehow going to control your mind or turn you into a communist, I don't really think that's the case. And it's another thing to not be afraid of. Like, let's say you think, well, maybe it's true. And that's why I'm breaking away from that habit of not touching fluoridated water. I'm thinking, wait, it's not true. I don't have any reason to think it's true. But if I act like it is, or if I'm actually scared of it, then it's like useless paranoia. And you only have so much bandwidth. But I think it's a basic fear. The enemy's poisoning the wells. You know, the paranoia is easy to spread in that way. But anyway, it's a truth or ism. That's just my point here. There's a number of things that you become awake. Well, what does being awake mean? It means that you're scared of a lot more stuff. And now you're trying to wake up them because they're sleeping and they're not scared like you. Like, if you're a scared conspiracy theorist, we don't have a lot in common. You have more in common with the woke crowd. You're in the box. There's no fear off-world stage. And a lot of fearful, scared conspiracy theorists will hold it against you that you don't have the fear because they believe that they've woken up to this nightmare. And I'm like, no, you woke up to a nightmare version of the dream world, but you didn't wake up from your sleep. Fake woke. Ryler says, belief can create reality like how people got sick during the pandemic. Well, a lot of people took advantage of the free sick time, the stim checks, the Netflix. A lot of people enjoyed it. You know, for all those who want to claim it was oppressive and tyrannical and we were forced, no, I didn't see any force. I saw complicity. It was like Christmas. Honestly, people enjoyed the hell out of the pandemic. If you didn't enjoy it, let me know in the chat. Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people enjoyed the heck out of it. I mean, it had its... I'm not saying it was great, but I'm just saying I'm not playing victim here. It was an alternate reality game, and not a very good one. I got a lot out of it, to be honest. But no, I'm not scared of any of these things. And do I think people got sick because of the fear? No. I think they just rebranded regular sickness and maybe hypochondria, maybe nocebo, placebo, but I don't think anything was different. It was all in the mind. Violet Pengon says, government just said water systems are under attack by foreign threats. Interesting. Could put chem in the water, news from today. Hopefully they put acid. This is where it's at, says the pandemic was whack, Tim. I didn't think so. I thought it was enlightening. And it changed society in a lot of good ways. It brought a lot of people up to speed. Everybody knows how to Uber Dash, DoorDash. The movie theaters are empty. Home improvement. People have all created their home theaters. People are far more internet savvy. Everybody knows how to Zoom, video conference, remote work. I think it was educational, and that was probably the point. Maybe the point of it was to get us all educated and positioned to be properly brainwashed for the next phase. Lean said, the government bribed us with money here. Yeah, I took my stimmy check and I went to Corona Field, where the UFO crashed in Roswell. But what we also saw was a schism activated. It was this chasm opened up between the left and right, where now your politics were a matter of public knowledge. It was transparent because now everyone had an interest in knowing your politics, and it was given away by your level of compliance. The non-compliant were on the right, full of hate, full of misinformation, and they were the super spreaders of the disease. The compliant ones, obviously, the fearful ones who went along with it, had the moral high ground. They could virtue signal with their face diapers. Hypocrisy was on full display, brainwashing on full display, and the gatekeeping operations were very obvious to me from day one, but they took, it's like a brain drain. All of the truthers got sucked into the anti-movement. A lot of them are still stuck on it. A lot of them are hooked on the anti. And look, I'm anti-anti. If you're an anti-anything, we can debate about it, but I'm not on your side. You have more in common with the pro. Anti-vax has more in common with pro-vax than with the off-world stage, the conscientious objector. You're on Team Fauci if you're on the anti-position. You really are. And what I mean by this is that the dialectic could not exist without controlled opposition, useful stooges. And if you became a useful stooge and a propaganda mule for several years after that psyop, I understand how you got there. I didn't go there because I know better. I don't fall for their belief systems. I don't fall for their myths, their contemporary myths. And what they introduced to the world was simply a new God construct, more like a devil that the atheists would believe in, a concept of sin that could be diagnosed medically, that could be described with science. The scientific priesthood was empowered. And they introduced the schism of the saved versus the unsaved. And this time it's saved by science. Science became savior. All right, let's move on. I think I made good use out of my time during that, and I think we did consolidate some of the best thinkers in all in the realm here. ISIS news anchors are AI fakes. 4 days after ISIS attacked the Crocus Theater, a video started circulating affiliated with the group. It's a 92-second clip with a news anchor in helmet and fatigues saying that it was part of the war between the Islamic State and countries fighting Islam. But the anchor was fake, AI generated, created by ISIS as part of their AI generated media program called News Harvest. Now, I find this to be intriguing when you see these ancient worldviews, a 7th century frame of mind, but now they're being empowered with AI, ChatGPT, and everything else. Like, I kind of feel like if you're part of a society that still stones women, or if you're a part of a society that still adheres to these really inhumane, pre-civilized concepts of how we should treat each other, you should be denied iPhones. You should be denied the internet. Like, if people want to live with a Stone Age philosophy, if they want to be stuck in the Dark Ages, we shouldn't let them have all these modern amenities. I don't think we should. It's just incongruent. Like, you almost don't deserve it. Like, I see these videos all the time. Just mayhem on the streets. People beating and shooting each other, and people are recording it. It's like, you're recording it. You're part of it. You're complicit. It's a sickness. It's like some David Cronenberg movie. What is it? Videodrome. It's a societal sickness. This total diffusion of responsibility. It's like NPC behavior at its worst. But it's just an indication, I think, of how, I don't know, we're like those apes in 2001: A Space Odyssey, and they're given the new technology. They learn violence and they start, killing each other. All right, let me go through your comments. Iranian President Kobe helicopter crash has all the signs of, says psy-obstacles. Yes, definitely a psyop. And it might be the starting gun, like with the Kobe Bryant crash. Right when that started, everything started accelerating. So I'm wondering, maybe that's the starting point. This is where it's at. It says, what happened to people going postal at the post office? I think there's a new Son of Sam movie coming out this summer. And the Son of Sam was a postman. I don't know if he's the the reason for that phrase coming up. But no, anyway, there was a blackout in 1977 in New York. And during these blackouts, which were repeated in 2019, 42 years later to the day, 42nd Street on, 42,000 people put in the dark, we were noticing these intriguing connections between these two blackouts. But during the blackout is when the Son of Sam was doing his shootings. And I think there's another movie coming out about this. I'll see if I can find it. Blackouts are so hot right now. Not quite as much so as cannibalism. Okay, phones are open for a few more minutes before we head out tonight. We have a new phone system, and last night it was crackly. I don't know if we had gremlins, goblins, something in the wires there. Now let me play this. This is just something I have to do. I know we have a moratorium on Taylor Swift and Alex Jones, but I have to point this out because we're entering an era here where people can no longer tell real from fake. And there's a difference between reacting and responding. The antis react. Media critics respond. The reaction is a position. It's an emotional take. The response is based on a full assessment of available facts, suspending judgment, of course, until time has elapsed and you can find out all the available facts. But here's an example of someone who reacts. And so determining real from fake isn't merely seeing through special effects. it also means context, seeking wider context. So let me play this clip, and then I'll show you how Alex Jones got played.
New neighbors that moved in, right? Yeah. Welcome to the neighborhood. Just for evidence, don't worry. I wanted to let you know that we've been chatting. There's no washing your car in the driveway.
There's no rules. It's not an HOA neighborhood.
Yeah, well, we have a group of people here, and it may not be a real HOA, but it's a club, and we think it's trashy. We're going to get you evicted from here.
Explain something to you. Number one is,
Oh.
don't come into my...
I'm not sure why you're advancing on me, sir.
I'm advancing on you because you're in my driveway. In the state of Florida, let me tell you something.
All right, now this man lectures the Karen who's trying to get him evicted for washing his car in his driveway, which apparently is trashy. So Jones says, classic liberal mindset. She gets in his face, but when he talks back, she plays victim. She says she doesn't care about the rules, and she's got a gang of people that are going to enforce a lie on him. She's so tone deaf, she posts the video on the internet, thinking it makes her look good. So the guy who uploaded it said, when you move into a liberal neighborhood.
Come in my domain, cause yourself some problems, okay? You can take that any way you want to.
Okay, sir, well,
I can wash my truck
I feel
in
like
my driveway.
you're
In
scaring
fact,
me.
I
I'm
might
calling
wash
the...
it.
You're the new...
Okay, now here's the rub here. It's not real. It's a satire. This is a TikTok husband and wife, and they do these fake Karen videos all the time. Why? I don't know. Clicks. Bethany here says, sorry to burst your bubble, Alex, but this is my video. I make satires making fun of crazy Karens. This is my husband, and I'm behind the camera. Here's the original. We have many other Karen videos on our playlist. So, like, do Karens even exist? Do they even exist? Or is this something that's been made up, and the people mocking it have created it? Like, is it a hyperstition? Like bowl cut shooters and climate change. Like, maybe Karens don't exist. But my point here is, if you react to everything without considering the context or examining it for fakeability, and here I understand what would be the incentive for faking it. I can see why he fell for it. But it shows you that even the world's top truther, this conspiracy prophet who sees it all coming, he gets tripped up by a little bit of satire, and this happens all the time. Now her explanation here, and you can accept it if you like, she says, we are calling attention to people acting ridiculously. The only people who'd get angry about this are people who act like this. If you got mad by this, you are a Karen. Anyway, very strange. Strange hobby. I mean, I guess they're doing something constructive with their time. Dewis in Paris says they're milking that Karen market. Truth Hurt says, definitely some Karens threatening me when I didn't wear the face diaper. Oh, if you hated the mask Karens, wait until the helmet Karens arrive. Oh, you're not going to wear a helmet for space junk? Your helmet protects me. And space junk, oh look, okay, the other day, I think it was in Portugal. In Portugal, there was that big light in the sky, and someone had claimed that it hit his house. And I don't know if it's true or not. I have to look into it again. But look, there's a wide opening here. You know, like, everybody's reality compromised. Nobody knows what's real or fake. If you claim that this chunk of metal in your bedroom came from space, and you have a hole in your ceiling, and you have a couple of false witnesses to corroborate with you, and a TikTok video with AVR, there's no way they can say it's not real. The believers are vulnerable. They're vulnerable because they don't have a mental immune system, and that's why we are being censored and marginalized. The powers that be that run this place, the wizards of media, know how pliable the mass mind is, and they want to be the only programmers. They don't want the deprogrammers being an influence. And we could easily conduct psyops if we wanted to. I'd find better actors. Dewis in Paris says, I hope I live long enough to meet helmet Karens. Well, they could probably create it. You could tap into the Karen market. Just have some Karen walking around with a helmet and have her chastise some innocent family at a park for not having their children wearing helmets. And you know that people would take it seriously. They would react to it. Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground. Let me get to this really quick. Slovakian politician raised eyebrows in his country when he suggested that the earth might be flat. This is the Culture Ministry chief official. Flat curious, they say. Lucas McCullough might be appointed head of the planned state broadcaster. Government official has been mentioned to lead the planned new government-controlled state broadcaster, STVR, Slovak television and radio. And he's not sure the Earth is a sphere. He says, has it been proven that the Earth is round? Have you been to outer space? I don't know. I haven't either.
Ja to poviem na jednoduchom príklade. Zem je gulatá, Zem je plochá. Máme ľudí, ktorí to budú tvrdiť. A chcete mi povedať, že tiež majú dostať priestor tí ľudia?
Myslím si, že určite áno. Máte
Z akého
vedieť...
dôvodu, keď to není podložené?
A čím to nie je podložené podľa
Je to
vás?
nejakými, ja sa pýtam vás, je to podložené, že Zem je plochá, je podložené...
A je podložené, že Zem je gulatá? Ja sa vážne pýtam, je to podložené? Boli ste...
Again, I think this is a valid point. You can say, I don't know, I haven't been there. I don't know is a valid stance. I don't know. And you can add to it, I don't know, you don't know either. You merely believe. And you can say that with any of the big hoaxes or small minor hoaxes. I don't know, and you don't either. You merely believe because you saw it on TV. And I would argue that agnosticism is a stronger position than faith in a known pathological liar. Okay, we'll pick this up tomorrow. Subscribe to the newsletter to get the archives. It should be an interesting week. I'll have an update with the process server likely by tomorrow. This has been a great month for the IPS. We had a slight interruption because of legal work, but everything is back on track, and now I'm doubling down on this. I have a lot more time to focus, and I'm working on some IPR deep dives. I'm going to do one on John Dee, working on one on the doxing of Q, and then we have one on the ISS. And finally, I am putting the IPS Insider into production. And the first freemium version will be distributed soon. I'm stripping it down to a freemium version with a full version online for the first few issues, just to get it rolling. But yeah, everything's moving along according to the infinite plan. I want to say thanks to all of you for your participation, comments, support, calls, and everything else. The research is always appreciated, and we'll continue this conversation. This is Space is Fake AF. Chief Crow, have a great evening.
Have you ever looked away from Earth into the black void?
Because you can see the stars.
Oh yeah.
You know, and
we were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not a black void. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
you see the gas.
Big time man, say the sky was not the limit. He fly to the moon in a second, but we haven't been back since 1972. Destroyed all the papers and blew up the Challenger crew, except for the twinsies. Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
Look out into deep space away from the sun. It's the darkest black you can imagine. hard to comprehend.
Space is fake AF.
Two little bitty O-rings.
Space is fake AF.
It's not what you think, homeboy.
Space is fake AF.
Don't you start doing this.
Space is fake AF.
Research Eddie Bravo. You just have a leak, and what you would do is lose air.